My name's Troy Elliott. My wife's name is Tracy, and April 3rd, 2014, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. It's over 5 years ago, and we've been battling and struggling to survive ever since. She's currently on an unfunded drug called Kadcyla. Unfortunately, this drug is actually fully funded in Australia and the UK and not in New Zealand. It's even been recommended by Pharmac's oncologist and professional team to fund it, and regrettably they haven't funded it, so it's a tough one for us. The treatment costs us about $9,000 every 3 weeks, has to be administered privately. It's heartbreaking, but what price do you put on life and an extension and time with family? We're not the only family in this situation. Unfortunately, there's thousands of people around New Zealand in the same case. The government need to wake up, fund Pharmac more, increase the funding. You know, we're one of the least funded in the world. Our percentage of GDP spending on medicines is about, a third of that of other countries in the OECD. We're 19th out of 20 countries in the OECD for introducing new medicines. It's bordering on criminal. In my past life, I was a successful businessman. We ran companies, we did quite well. We actually were lucky enough in Auckland, it's a bit of a rarity, we had a mortgage-free house. Since my wife was diagnosed those 5 years ago, we now have a $500,000 mortgage. I've had to stop working to make sure I'm there as a caregiver for her. We're in a position we can't actually borrow more money against our house anymore because, if you're not actually earning money, you can't borrow it back. Sorry, you can't borrow the money because the bank doesn't think you can pay it back. So, like so many other people in New Zealand, we've had to resort to Give a Little. And Give a Little has become a surrogate Pharmac. That's wrong. That puts us into a third world country scenario, and that's just not the way it should be. My wife and I have been married 19 years last week. We've been together over 25 years. It's just devastating. It's tragic seeing a beautiful, strong warrior princess in the position she's in now. We're a couple that prefer to give than to take, and we've done a lot of charity work over the years. To put your hand out to do that, it feels degrading sometimes. And for Tracy to see her like she is, when I left this morning, she's in bed. She doesn't look like herself anymore, but she's still beautiful to me. Her heart is the same, her mind's the same, her humour's the same. It's just her body that's been ravaged by this despicable, disgusting disease. What makes it even harder is that we may not make our 20th wedding anniversary because Pharmac is sitting on making decisions. The government increased in a so-called wellbeing budget $10 million each year for the next 4 years, 1% of the Pharmac budget. With inflation sitting there at 2%, we're actually going backwards. And the worst thing is that that actual 10 million was for what they termed affordable medicines or affordable drugs. Trust me, the drugs that we're on and thousands of others in New Zealand are on are not affordable at $120,000 a year.
I'm Judy, and I'm here because of my granddaughter Natalie. Natalie has spinal muscular atrophy, and she's 16 years old. She lives in Australia at the moment. She was diagnosed when she was 16 months old. At that time, children were expected to live to their teens or 20s. There have been progressions in equipment and things where she's now hoped to live a little bit older than that, but we have known friends of ours to die earlier in their 20s. Natalie moved with her family to Australia 6 years ago. It was never intended to be permanent. Natalie always intended to come back for university. The family wanted to come back when she was 18. She's been on Spinraza for just under a year now. She had her loading doses before Christmas, and she's had one injection since then. And it's made a tremendous difference to her. But the main focus is on the fact that now she's on Spinraza, she's expected to have a normal lifespan, and she won't lose any more motor neurons. She will stay at the stage she's at the moment, with hopefully some improvements. She wants to come back to Auckland University to study engineering, but if she comes back and Pharmac still aren't funding Spinraza, then the potential is that she could die. So at the moment we're all just expecting her to stay in Australia unless Pharmac does something about it. She was born here, she desperately wants to come back here. The whole family is keen to come back here. I've had illness, and my son-in-law's father has had a brain bleed recently. So both he and my daughter are very keen to come back. The two little children want to come back, but Natalie, most of all, has always wanted to come back to Auckland. We don't think it would be wise for her to come back. I don't know what will happen. I don't know who'll stay over there with her, but somehow she's got to stay in Australia just to continue getting the drug. It's tragic for the whole family.
My name's Bella. I have a 4-year-old daughter called Tilly who has a form of epilepsy. She started having seizures about 8 months ago now. And they manifested initially as a complete change in her personality, her cognition, her ability to communicate with us, before she started having actual seizures. And she's been taking a medication called Lamictal for the last 4 or 5 months. She's only recently reached a therapeutic dose, and she's gone from having between 5 and 20 seizures a day to having virtually none. So Pharmac have proposed, or have decided, that they are defunding Lamictal in favour of a generic alternative called Loga. The consultation process has gone on for a while, and since the decision's been made, parents like me and patients that take the drug have learned that MedSafe opposed the move. They cited it as a serious safety issue. Pharmac themselves estimate that 25% of people who switch drugs will relapse or experience terrible side effects. I've contacted my local MP, I've contacted our Health Minister, David Clark, I've contacted our Associate Health Minister to try and find out how Pharmac think it's defensible to switch a drug with the potential for 2,500 people to suffer, and I can't get any answers. Sorry. I'm worried that things will go back to the way they were. My daughter had days where she couldn't talk and she couldn't walk. She lost language. She suffered. It's a cruel illness, and it's callous for Pharmac to consider defunding a medication that works.